Hello and welcome to Sky Career Talks, where we display why it's great to learn with us and communicate. I'm your host, Gladys Sapita, and today joining us, we have Lisa Thornton. Lisa is a technical services librarian with responsibilities in cataloging, collection development, and shared management of the library's health information services and programs. She graduated from Rutgers with her Master's of Information in Library Science in 2019. She is also an active NJLA member and currently serves as president of the Technical Services and Collection Development Section, is a member of the Professional Development Committee, and was part of the 2021 class of emerging leaders. While at Rutgers, Lisa served as co-president of LISA and was a member of the MI Student Association. Lisa came to the MI program as a non-traditional student looking for a career change. So welcome, Lisa. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
So let's get started. The first question we always tend to start with is if you can speak a little bit about just a brief overview of your career journey as a librarian.
Sure. Yeah, I started as a library assistant in the circulation department. I fell into that job basically. I was actually homeschooling my children. I homeschooled my kids for 20 years. And so I was just looking for something part-time as they were getting older and didn't need me as much. I started working in the circulation department and I fell in love with the library. And so I worked there for a few years and then decided once my youngest was a senior in high school that I was going to start the MI program. So I enrolled in that during his senior year. And once that happened, my director was great. I was promoted to library associate and she took me aside and asked what I wanted to learn about. And so she really supported me, really all the staff supported me in learning, more about the library outside of the circ position I had. So I did some work in circ, I worked in adult services, I worked in technical services, and I really got to kind of experience all the different parts of the library. I even did some teen stuff. So I got to see what I liked and what I didn't like.
You really did a little bit of everything there.
Yeah, I really did. I didn't do any of the story times, but because I knew that was beyond me.
I think that's a great way to start because I feel like there's some preconceived notions about librarians and stuff and what it is we actually do. So I think the fact that you got to sample a little bit of everything before doing it or while you were studying, it really does help cement a lot of the theory that we learn in class. What was your favorite department to have worked at while you were trying everything out?
Well, I, as you can probably tell from my current title, I really liked technical services. I loved working in all the departments, really. I really enjoyed pretty much everything, but I found that I'm, good with the attention to detail. And so doing cataloging in the back, which a lot of people would find very boring, I find really interesting and fun. And there aren't a lot of people that feel that way. So, so I went more towards that. So that was great because actually I started doing that before I even took the cataloging class, which made the cataloging class way easier. Still hard, but way easier than it would have been if I didn't.
I can imagine having had some experience cataloging before being new to cataloging has to be a little daunting, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So can you speak a little bit about technical services? I know that differs depending on the library, but if you speak a little bit about what you did when you worked at technical services.
Sure. Yeah. When I first started, I just was trying to learn the cataloging. So I worked on that. I think maybe one day a week I was in that department. And so I mainly just cataloged. But I then started working in collection development because my director asked if I would take over our electronic resources. So our ebooks and e-audio. And so I took over all of that, all the collection development for it and the cataloging for it. And I took full responsibility of that aspect. So that was another thing that I sort of worked on then. And then that grew into taking on more responsibilities with collection development with the print collection as well.
Who was it that pushed you sort of to pursue this career path? I know you said you started as circulation, and then it sounds like you had a pretty good support system, from the top down. So I'm sure that definitely helped. Is there anyone that you could credit, say, that was what changed it for me. And I love libraries and this is what I want to do.
I don't think there was anyone in particular. I would say that my supervisor in circulation was really, really supportive of me. And, basically her pushing me towards this meant she was pushing me out of the department. But she did that, she did that to support me, saying, I know, there are other things you can be doing here. She helped push me that way. And like I said, the director was really open to letting me go through different experiences. And the head of technical services, who's my current supervisor, also was really supportive of just letting me learn anything I wanted to back there, so
great.
Yeah, it was really great.
There was so much nuanced stuff that goes behind the scenes that, people don't realize. Even when you're starting in the profession, there's so much that I didn't know went into it. It's so easy to assume everything you see front facing, but cataloging is such a back end that no one really knows, how. I mean, I know a lot of people will say about the Dewey Decimal System, but there's a reason, there's a reason to the madness, and it's not something that is really easily accessible to anyone that's not in the field. I did see that you also worked at or interned at the Library of Congress. Can you talk a little bit about that as well? That's so interesting.
Yeah, that was a really great experience. So it was the summer before I finished. So I graduated in December of 18. Well, technically the degree is January 19, right? But I finished it in December of 18. And so the summer before that, I had applied. Even though I had such a great support system in the public library, but I wanted to make sure I had some outside experiences before I finished the degree, so I could be sure that, yes, it is public libraries I want to do. And so I applied for a variety of internships and was shocked that I got to go to the Library of Congress, still shocked that I got to do that. But I spent 10 weeks. I was, again, fortunate that my job gave me a leave of absence because I did physically go to the Library of Congress.
Oh, okay.
And so they granted me a 10-week leave of absence, and I went and worked full time there for those 10 weeks. And so I worked in the Congressional Research Service, and I was an information specialist. So I worked in, it was information architecture, data, and analytics. And so the main thing I did was assign metadata to memos and reports. The Congressional Research Service, they basically do research for Congress. So if they're having a new ambassador come up, or if they are, talking about a bill or whatever it is, and they need research, the librarians at the Congressional Research Service do all that research for them.
Wow.
And then it's really cool. And there's a bunch of divisions. They specialize based on the area that's needed. And so what I did was I assigned metadata for the current reports and memos that were being done at the time. I also went through the old archived reports that were still in like print form on these old like mimeograph sheets. And so I had to scan those in, digitize them, and then assign the metadata for those too. So, I mean, I got to read some really cool stuff.
It seems like you had a full experience. So that's not, wow. I can only imagine what you've seen and read.
Yeah, it was very cool.
So speaking to your current title, you do the library's health information services and programs. Maybe you can speak a little bit about how, obviously in the time of the pandemic, and how that has changed what you do, or if there's obviously added challenges or maybe things that have come out of that normally wouldn't have come out of the programming that you do.
Yeah. So because I took the health science information class at Rutgers, which was a great foundation for me. So when I finished the program, I knew I wanted to do the consumer health information specialist, which is a certification from the Medical Library Association. And that was really just based on my interest. I've always had an interest in health. My bachelor's degree is in chemistry, and I just have always been kind of interested in health and science. So when I did that certification, the director asked if I was interested in, working on some of that as well, which is sort of outside of my regular job title. So I started working, another coworker also got her certification around the same time. And so we started coming up with programming ideas. And we used to have a public health nurse come in and do screenings for blood pressure, things like that. And we started working with the township. Our township, like many in New Jersey, have the Mayor's Wellness campaign. And so I serve on that committee and work with them to bring more health and wellness activities. So that's been interesting with the pandemic because we've been doing sort of more virtual for all of those things. I think it's starting to lighten up now, but we did like a bingo of different healthy activities that you could do, bike to the farmer's market, take an online, class, do a virtual 5K, those kinds of things. So we started working with doing that type of stuff. We also started, my coworker got a grant from NNLM, which is the National Network of Libraries of Medicine, to do a class that we had started before the pandemic. Yes, we had done in person before the pandemic. And it's sort of like a seniors type fitness class for balance and agility kind of a thing. And so we had done that in person a couple of times before the pandemic. And my coworker was able to get a grant for us to continue that on a weekly basis. It had been once a month, a weekly basis virtually.
Wow.
And so we've had that. Yeah. And my coworkers really managed that. But it was so successful, and we had people from different countries joining us. We had people from many people out of state. And so that's continued, even though the grant ended.
Wow,
that's continued. Great. Yeah, it's been really, really wonderful, really well received. And because it was so popular, our library board agreed to, let us fund that now.
Well, that's so great. That's really so important, especially with the elderly community, stability and balance. It's something you don't normally think about, but it is things that you lose those gross motor skills the older you get, it's harder. Well, thank you so much for your time. I have one last question before we go.
Sure.
What advice would you give to someone starting in your career field?
Yeah, well, I would certainly, to any MI students, I would say, as we talked about, the classes are so great and foundational, but they are fairly theoretical. And so I think it is good to get some kind of experience in whatever way you can, whether that's through an internship or through an independent study project, working with a library, or, if you can get a job, that's great too. Especially, in paid internships. When I worked at Library of Congress, it was a paid position. And it was even paid better than what I was making at my regular job. So it made it possible.
That's great.
Yeah, it made it possible for me to do that, to go down there and do that. So certainly I would recommend, look at those federal internships, because, they're good. But just to get some of that practical experience, because I think there's when you're in grad school, you want to get through it as quickly as possible, right? You want to get your degree and you want to get out. And I think, while you can do that pretty quickly in the MI program, if you rush through and don't get the practical experience, I think you are missing something. And I think it's better to take it a little bit slower. Financially, you have to do what you got to do. But if you can get some practical experience at the same time, I think it really goes a long way. To just making what you want to do, but also to show employers, that you have both the practical and the theoretical skills.
Well, thank you so much for your time. It has been a pleasure talking to you. Thank you for being one of our mentors, and we appreciate everything you do for us here at Rutgers.
Oh, thank you. And I totally appreciate Rutgers. I had great mentors at Rutgers. A lot of people gave me, informational interviews and wonderful things. So I'm happy to be able to pay it forward.
Well, thank you. Have a good night.
You too.